The Ontario Real Estate Association has created a mandate to provide some ideas to the rental situation going on here in the province of Ontario. They've come up with some ideas that could help to reform the Residential Tenancies Act, which was initially set up in 2006. We're now basically almost 20 years later, and they've provided some ideas that could help transition things to more up-to-date methods. Let's take a look at what these ideas look like, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below as we're going along for what exactly you think could also help in the Landlord Tenant Board situation that's been going on here in the province basically since the pandemic. And you can get all these details on OREA.com, OREA's website. Essentially, they are recommending stronger rental market, action-ready recommendations provide relief to the Ontario rental market quickly, while long-term recommendations address deeply rooted problems that will involve ongoing reform. Let's start here, creating modern legislation that works. Action ready, create a dedicated N12 process for buyers' personal use to speed up timelines and reduce delays. The N12 is given to tenants as a notice of eviction. Typically, if a buyer is looking to move into a property they just purchased for their own use, or if a landlord has a family member, for example, moving in or moving back into the property, then that's when an N12 would be issued. There are rules that go along with that, and we won't be discussing those in this video, but the N12, you can readily find it, and all the details are right on the form. Strengthen monitoring, enforcements, and penalties against bad faith N12 evictions. Of course, that is another piece of it, is making sure that the N12 is delivered in good faith, of course. Develop clear, accessible resources to educate both landlords and tenants on their rights and responsibilities under that Residential Tenancies Act 2006, which is the RTA. Mandate the equal treatment of all individuals under the Condominium Act 1998 to be inclusive of diverse families. And long-term, review and modernize the RTA to reflect today's rental market, and reform rent control by implementing a phased-in approach to balance tenant protections with incentives for new rental supply. There's been a lot of talk about rent control here, especially in a city like Toronto, but if we look at the Ontario rules, rent control is different if a property has been occupied before November 15th, 2018 versus after November 15th, 2018. And that's what I believe they're talking about, how it's different on both, and not sure what the solution is either direction. They also go on to say improving the broken Landlord and Tenant Board, action ready, move away from current digital first strategy and restore in-person hearings as a default, improve legal aid support for tenants, and remove financial barriers for tenant maintenance complaints filed in good faith, establish a timely Landlord Tenant Board application screening process to identify and remedy errors early, and long-term find new opportunities to support mediation services between landlords and tenants, the LTB. LTB is the Landlord Tenant Board, of course, and improve LTB adjudicator training, recruitment, and retention strategies. They also go on to mention building a healthy and diverse housing supply, reduce government-imposed costs on new rental projects, streamline the permit process for new construction, promote and help scale innovative approaches to affordable housing development, investigate legislative changes needed to provide rent-to-own programs in Ontario, tax incentives for small landlords who provide new rental units in rapidly growing markets, and provide a rental renovation tax credit for smaller independent landlords who invest in specific improvements to the rental properties while keeping monthly rent costs consistent. And long-term and exclusionary zoning across Ontario, invest in building 99,000 community housing units over the next 10 years, which is about 100,000 a year. I'm not sure why they wouldn't just put 100,000, but they went with 99,000. So those are some of the ideas brought forward by OREA's board to try and create some changes at the RTA, the Residential Tenancies Act, and the Landlord Tenant Board, of course, to try and streamline some of the issues that are at hand and where we're hearing those delays on eviction processes or even just getting information back. And it is something that certainly needs a big change. We have seen quite that backlog of 3 to 5 months across the board, and getting that back into more of a timely manner would certainly help the process for both tenants and landlords, which is a great thing if everybody can find ways to get to solutions faster. And that way there's less delays and less costly delays for both parties when it comes to that. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below on what you think of these ideas, and if there's anything you would add into these ideas as well. I'm Michael Ouzas. Thanks for watching.